I'm joined today by Jim Croxton, CEO of BIGGA. Welcome, Jim. Been an interesting couple of years, and it's not ended for you yet, has it?
Well, it's not ended for any of us, has it, really, Martin, yet, despite what one or two people would have us believe. You and I were just chatting recently and hoping that we're coming towards the tail end of whatever this last couple of years has been, but we're not quite finished. Obviously, for us, we're talking on the day before we would have moved into Harrogate for BTME in normal circumstances. So that's the very big elephant in the room. We're now 8 weeks away from that date. But funny enough, I was in Harrogate yesterday attending a different event, but an event that usually precedes our event. Slightly different audience and different sort of compulsion to be there. It's an industry buying show, and their audience stated that they really wanted to be there. It's for the Christmas industry, and they've got a very, very small buying window. So they took place. I went along. It wasn't normal, but it wasn't a long way from normal. And it was pretty heartening to see an event taking place in the space that we're so used to, and apparently going so reasonably successfully. So I'm in a decent mood today.
Good stuff. So, tough circumstances. You took the decision about a month ago that you needed to move this. At that time, it was the right decision. Nobody questions that. You've certainly over the last 2 years had more than your fair share of tough breaks, I think, in terms of the timings of outbreaks happening and impacting on Festival of Turf as well as BTME. We think you've done your best, but why have you chosen March?
First of all, we got to a position we felt in early mid-December where January became untenable, even though this Omicron spike perhaps hasn't been as drastic to individuals as we feared it may be. All the information we've got right now points to the fact that postponing from or not doing the January date was the right decision. We were beginning to get people pulling out anyway, employers saying they weren't comfortable with our members attending, etc., and exhibitors being uncomfortable. So January became out of the question reasonably clearly early mid-December. We were left with two options then, which was to either reschedule or cancel. And our feeling in very simple terms is we can reschedule, so let's give that a go if it's feasible. We have the nuclear option of then cancelling again up our sleeves if something else happens. But as we've done throughout all this, we consulted with people we trust. A lot of people in this industry as well as I do. There are people that are very sensible and level-headed. And I spoke with a number of people through sort of the early part of December, gauging their views on where we were at. We feel our event is a winter show, or at least it's an off-season show. So I felt and got support that if we could get it in before the end of March, it was feasible. After that, it becomes very difficult, particularly with Easter in the way. Happily, there was an available date at the HCC, which worked pretty well. An exactly 8-week delay, which we felt was long enough to get through. Hopefully, whatever Omicron throws at us, still feasible. It's not perfect, but then again, we ceased living in a world of perfect a couple of years ago, and for some, January isn't perfect, albeit our preference, I think, in the future is to come back to our regular date, which we know works really well. The key thing was, and that's been borne out by the evidence since we made the decision, is there was genuinely a will to get the event on. People were really looking forward to it. And that's not just my members or the visitors. It was people like you, but it was the exhibitors who were really keen to do it. And if they hadn't been, I was very comfortable with the idea that we cancel and we move on and we wait another year. But I was genuinely convinced and compelled by the people that we spoke to that we should try everything we can do to get BTME on. So we found the date. Logistically, it was interesting getting everything lined up. All the contractors, all the teams involved in hotels, etc. But they all fell into place one by one, which was brilliant. A really good team effort by my team and by all the people we work with. And it emerged as a possibility. So we're giving it a go. As of today, funnily enough, we've now managed to have conversations with every single one of our exhibitors. We had 112 committed on the day of postponement. As of today, we have 104 that have stuck with us. So we've lost 8. All of them have been very civilized conversations. I'm very comfortable with every decision people have taken not to come. It's predominantly small organizations who have got significant plans in March to be on the road doing work. A couple of contracting organisations where they would happily take a time off in January when it's quiet. They'd come to BTME to tout for business, but now they've got work booked in. So everybody that's not there is there, is not there with our blessing, if you know what I mean. We haven't lost any of the marquee names. We have lost a couple of decent sized exhibitors that will hurt us, just on a purely logistical level. I won't mention names just now because I'll let those guys explain to the industry their decisions in due course. But I'm thrilled with 8 out of 112 not coming back as things stand is really, really, really positive.
One of the things that has kind of been mentioned to me by some exhibitors is hotels have been tougher to get for the March date, and also some of them have been hit by not being able to get money back on hotels that they booked because they took the non-cancelable deals to get the better rate. Is there anything in place that one would help anybody with covering that? Is there discussions with Harrogate as a council or the venue? And what are exhibitors saying about the actual maybe extra costs? Because hotel rooms do seem to be a bit more expensive than they would be in January.
Yeah, I have to say this was probably one of my biggest fears. If one of our individual contractors couldn't do the event, I was certain we'd find somebody else that could. But if we couldn't get hotel beds in Harrogate, we were going to be really struggling. There's an organisation which for years was called Destination Harrogate and has recently rebranded, and the name will not stick in my head. It's the Harrogate Hotel and Tourism Association or whatever else it is. That is basically all the major hotels in town. So we engaged directly with them. And I'm really pleased to say they all came back and said, right, as a group, we will honour bookings and we'll honour rates as best we can. Some have actually cancelled other bookings and moved people out, apologetically. I know there's a couple of hotels outside of that group that are already very busy and have just said to people, you can't come now, some of which has affected us, some has affected exhibitors and visitors. I'm pleased to say that even the ones that sort of the big corporate machines, your sort of Premier Inn, Travelodge types that aren't run as a hotel in Harrogate, they are an offshoot of a large organisation. Even some of those with the non-transferable type bookings have been able to transfer some bookings, sometimes at additional cost. As things stand, you may be ahead of me in terms of actually having conversations with people that are adversely affected by it. We haven't had anybody coming to us saying there are problems, but we will be open to hearing people's problems and trying to work with them. But at the moment, as I understand it, because there is cancellation taking place, we are losing. Some of the exhibitors will probably have fewer people in town, and we know that some of the visitors that have booked are cancelling and maybe rebooking at a later stage. So we believe there are still some rooms available. But so far, it hasn't turned into a torrent of challenges within our own team. I'm not aware of anybody really that's badly affected. But please get in touch with me if you have been, because I'd like to talk to those hoteliers and try and work through that.
Okay, well, that's great to hear, Jim. I think the other negative, I'll call it negative comment I've heard is the timing is smack bang on the start of things starting to pick up with the season coming along. It's a winter show. We're on the cusp of spring, I guess, on those dates. Who knows when spring is these days? It seems to be the climate's completely all over the place. What are your feelings around that? Because there's a number of guys that have said to me, can't come, too busy.
Yeah, we've had those conversations. So to give you an idea, we used to use the phrase tickets in terms of our education bookings. It's just a simple term. And at our peak, just before we postponed, we were at about 650 tickets booked, and today we're at about 550. So we've taken and we've probably lost about 150 and gained 50 in that time. People have either come off waiting lists or we have had new bookings, people that can come in March that couldn't come in January. We've actually sold a couple of stands to companies that weren't on the list and now are because March works for them, and we've still got some outstanding conversations with those. My feeling on this, and I'd say not a feeling, the evidence that we have from speaking to our audience is that yes, there are people that won't be able to come. I think in general we're going to see probably smaller groups. So we've already started to have conversations amongst our audience around things like car sharing. So where a club would have sent 4 guys up in one vehicle, a couple of clubs are going to get together and send 2 each and share the vehicle, try and be good for the environment. There is an education process which we're about to begin. This is really at club level. So we're doing quite a bit of work with the Golf Club Managers Association and the owners who have in their head that March is grass jumping out of the ground, and they can't possibly handle their greenkeepers being away, when the reality of it is that the golf season now doesn't really start properly till May. And that actually we do see grass growing in January. I'm looking out my window today, it's reasonably fresh, but it's the sunniest, most beautiful day. And there's probably a lot of our members say they're just as busy in January as they are in March. But I think we've got some hearts and minds to change on this a little bit. And happily, at the moment, a lot of our members that have said to us, we're so keen to come to BTME, how can we help? Are going and chatting to their mates and saying, well, hang on a minute, when you say it's difficult, is it difficult or is it impossible? I mean, is it difficult because you normally are at work in March and you've got to work around that? But I'm expecting there to be a drop off in numbers. I'm expecting it won't be January, and we're saying that internally, and I know that our sales team, have been really, really thrilled with how these exhibitors have come back, but they're not trying to sell something we're not going to deliver. We think we'll have a good BTME, but it won't be January.
Okay, do you have a figure to put on that? Do you have an idea of where you want to be?
No, I mean, I saw a poll done recently and on social media, and at one point I think there was 80 people saying that they couldn't come. We went through our figures. Only 8 of those 80 had actually registered to come, whereas of all the ones that said they were still coming, the majority of those had registered. So our registration numbers are pretty irrelevant at this stage. We don't actually even have, with weeks to go, our numbers are always pretty low. That we get a real build up in the last week or two. I don't know. I wouldn't want to put a figure right now, Martin, because it'll be difficult, and we'll know more as we go through. And we've always had this situation where we get to the week of BTME in January, and if suddenly the weather is brilliant for getting work done after a dreadful spell, people drop out because they say, I need to get some spraying done, need to get some renovation work done. I am aware that for the non-golf side, particularly around schools, late March, we're still going to get some of the guys there, but that's a bit more difficult. It's the transition from winter sports to summer sports. It's pre-Easter with work going on. But again, we'll pick up some other things. I mean, we've always struggled with certain sports in January because it's European nights, that sort of thing in football. We might just get some benefit in March on that.
Well, certainly there'll be fewer clubs involved in Europe, so that might help you by then. I think the good news from that I'm pulling out is that you're focusing on educating people, how can you get there? Is part of that education trying to make sure that you get the decision maker, the budget holder there, and not necessarily, the rest of the team?
Yeah, I mean, BTME, I'm into my something like 11th year of this now. And when I first joined BIGGA, I knew BTME as an exhibition, and then you soon find out that it's 2 events in one, and actually the 2 are dependent on each other. And we have a really fascinating conversation every year with exhibitors who say there's too much education taking place while the show's on, and then you say, well, actually, I've only got, right now I've got 250 people upstairs education, and I've got 3,500 in the hall. So it is, one is a smaller number of people. But what the exhibitors tell me is that the person that comes to BTME to do education is the exact person they want to see on their stand. So the 2 have got to go hand in hand. There's a large audience in Harrogate of people that just come just to the education, just to the exhibition, should I say. We get a lot of, northern and Midland based people come for the day. Could be in bowling greens, could be in landscaping, could be in schools and multi-sport. They probably don't even know that there's conference with hundreds of people taking place upstairs as we go through it. But we know that audience of people that arrive as early as some Saturday night, Sunday, and stay through the week have ample time to engage with the exhibition between all the sessions. We create those windows, but actually it's the education that pays for the trip. It's the budget that gets them to the exhibition is their training budget, and it's critical. And the numbers have grown year on year. We're getting more and more education every time we do this event, which has got to be good news for the industry, not just for the exhibition. The more of our people committed to education, the more likely we are to be able to do our job of making the world a better place for them by explaining to their industry that they're educated.
It's been a common theme for the last few years, certainly education and making the whole industry a better place. We touched very briefly on your plans for 2023. I wasn't clear as to whether it is a January date or you hope to have a January date for next year.
We have January booked for 2023. and plan A is to go to the date which we know works well for both exhibitors and for visitors. We hope March works well as well, but we know that everyone's preferred date is January. The big thing that we've got to try and understand, and I'm not even certain we'll understand this for a while yet, is whether or not living with COVID, whatever that looks like, means winter spikes. We just don't know if that's going to be part of it. Clearly, we've had them the last 2 winters. It seems that this year's spike is substantial in number. I don't want to take away from the fact that there are many people who've been very poorly. I know you had the disease yourself over Christmas and probably didn't have your finest Christmas because of it. But I think people seem to think that this spike has been milder in terms of its impact on people. People are still dying. That this is still a dangerous situation. So, if we get to a situation where winter indoor events are just not a good thing, we'll have to make that call, but we don't have the evidence today to make that. So as of now, January is booked. We're getting together our booking forms and things ready to go out to the exhibitors when we meet them in March, and we'll plan, we hope, for whatever passes for normality, which I hope we see sometime this year rather than wait until 2023 to see it.
Fingers crossed. We all want that, Jim. Can I just clarify on that? Do you have a contingency for March if January isn't possible?
At this stage, no. It would probably cost us, double the fee to book 2 slots as things stand. So we're working with the exhibition centre, but they're very good with us. We're considered a key client. We understand that BTME is the biggest financial impact on Harrogate as a town of any event all year long. It's not necessarily the biggest in terms of floor space taken or number of people, but because our audience stays a long time, and because it's famously an excellent social and networking event as well as it is a daytime exhibition, it's the most important event Harrogate have. So that was very clear when we made the postponement. The speed in which the contractors fell into place and the way the hoteliers worked with us to make the event happen was really impressive.
It's very clear that for BIGGA and BTME, financially, it probably hasn't been the best of times over the last couple of years because you've missed a show, you've got a show that's been pushed back. Where do you stand now as an organisation with the finances? Financially,
I'm can almost feel a smile coming off my face, which is it's slightly unusual. We're far better than we thought we'd be. We've had a couple of things happen in the last couple of years. We actually sold our offices at Aldgate Manor, and we've ring-fenced the money from that to be used on our next development. But that's currently sat in the bank there. But in terms of where we're at as a business, in terms of our kind of profit and loss and balance sheet, we put together the doomsday scenario as we all did back in sort of March, April, May 2020. And we absolutely smashed that, partly down to the fact that we were able to work with furlough. We had members of the team that weren't engaged in key work, so they were furloughed. Our membership numbers held up. In fact, our January the 1st figures, which came out a week or so ago, brought us back to basically the place we were at the start of the pandemic. So it's taken a long time for the drop off in numbers to come back, but we're back where we started. And I'm delighted and grateful that our trade revenue has held up incredibly well. A couple of companies made corporate decisions top level, usually overseas, that they weren't going to spend money in the pandemic, and we work with those. But practically everybody else has maintained their spend with us, whether it be advertising, whether it be partnerships and initiatives. So we restructured our team in late 2020, which is a euphemistic way of saying, unfortunately, we had to let some people go. It was horrible for those involved and for those left behind. But our team is now back up to only 1 or 2 people down from where it was at its peak back then. And BTME or no BTME, the financial year that we're in looks very solid. So we're actually in a really good position. And importantly, the financial measure is a key one. You're in business, Martin. You know that in the end the till needs to ring. But where we are as an organisation in terms of our profile within the golf industry, because we had that opportunity at the start of the pandemic to really step forward and I think take the lead in the way that the golf industry handled the early part of the pandemic, I think that we've put our members in a better place. They're better appreciated by their members. We recently announced the independent committee of golf club salaries recommended the largest increase it's ever recommended. I know that we've got significant inflation, but the feedback we got from the golf club managers and owners, etc., was that greenkeepers are critical to this, and we need to make sure that they're well paid and looked after. Mental health of our membership is now seen as something on the agenda for club managers and for golf club owners and officials. That was a challenge for us, as you know. You and I worked on this some years ago to try and raise this awareness. So we actually, ironically enough, and it sometimes feels wrong to sort of almost look back at a pandemic and say, well, it's been beneficial in certain ways, but by lots of measures, we're in a better place than we were 2 years ago. I still wish it hadn't happened, and we all do. And it would have been lovely if we'd had BTME in January 2021 and we were about to go and see you guys in Harrogate next week. Would be lovely, but we are where we are.
The recurring theme that comes up every now and then, and even more so, I guess, over the last year or two without having had a BTME, one show. What's your position on that currently, Jim?
Well, first of all, I'd like to sort of wish Jeff, all the best with his recovery. I think I don't know how wide it's known is, but he took a bit of a turn the week after Soltex, and I know has been off work recuperating. We share texts very often. I think he's in pretty good shape and looking to come back stronger and better. Ironically, we had a really, really good meeting. He and my chairman and he and his chairman during Soltex, in a pokey little room at the NEC and talking probably the most proactively we've spoken in years, partly because of the pandemic, about the sort of initiatives that we should be working jointly on. At this stage, that doesn't include shows. At this stage, we firmly believe that partly down to the uniqueness of our event and its link with education and its time of year and the way the venue works so well for the event that we put on, that we believe there are miles in the legs of BTME, and I think there still are. And I enjoyed Soltex. I thought it was actually. I know you were there, and I saw you in one of the aisleways. It was just lovely, wasn't it, to be doing something that felt like normal. Meeting clients and colleagues, meeting members, meeting guys from the GMA side of the industry that aren't well known to us. And the fact it went so well, and the fact that the pointers point towards BTME being popular this year, and the way that the trade have responded suggests to me that we've got it right, and we keep going with that. But as you and I have discussed on a number of times over the years, the world evolves, the world keeps turning. The key thing is that I think our relationship with GMA is very strong, and the key thing alongside that is that the support that the trade have shown both organisations this last couple of years, it's been very clear they believe the exhibition side and supporting the associations and their ambitions is important to the industry. So I feel pretty confident we've got a few more BTMEs in us yet.
So you mentioned you've got some initiatives that you might be working together on. Can you share any of those?
Well, yeah, the simple sort of things, really. Education. For example, right now we're working. My team and the GMA team are working closely on the Level 3 apprenticeship, which is looking like being effectively a core and options apprenticeship, whereby sports turf operatives and greenkeepers study the same core course and then go off to specialise at later stages in their areas. We had some concerns because neither of us wants to see the core qualification dumbed down, but we're confident that that's not going to happen. We've got decent position on that. So education is the first thing. So that's the way forward. But also mental health and the general sort of advocacy of the turf professional. Grounds Week went well for them this year. We weren't particularly involved, or last year should I say, but may well be in future. So just the day-to-day stuff where there's duplication.
Jim, I think there's obviously some positives that have come out of COVID. A hell of a lot of negatives. It seems that BTME is, continuing hopefully in March. We hope it goes back to a January date next year. And, let's all hope that come this time next year, we're getting ready for a 2023 show in Harrogate.
I very much hope so. It'll mean that a lot of other things have fallen into place to have normal life. So if we're in good shape next January, hopefully we all are.
And we'll see you in March.
Thanks, Martin. Look forward to it.